Hello everyone, welcome back to the Analyst by Vajiram and Ravi, dated 20th July 2025. Today again we will be discussing some important topics that has appeared in today's The Hindu and The Indian Express newspapers, which are very relevant for your examination. In the initial two articles, we have included two mains practice questions which will be highly useful for your upcoming mains examination. So in the first topic, we'll try to understand the presidential reference under the Article 143 of the Constitution. After that, in our second topic, we will look into the status of textile sector in India, its significance, challenges and the way forward. After that, in our simplified section, we will take up 5 articles and we will try to explain them in simplest language possible to enrich your understanding of the newspapers. Additionally, we have also incorporated some prelims pointers which is going to be highly crucial for your upcoming prelims and mains examinations. So have a look on them also and stay tuned. So let's start our discussion with the first topic, that is presidential reference under Article 143 of the Constitution. And this particular topic pertains to syllabus of your GS paper 2, Executive, Judiciary and Indian Constitution. And the context of this topic is that the Supreme Court's 5-judge bench is going to consider the presidential reference under Article 143 on the timeline for the assent to the state bills on July 22nd. Let's try to understand this. So bill is a draft legislation when duly enacted becomes an act or law. In case of the state bill, when it is passed by the state legislature and it gets the assent of the governor, after getting the assent, it will become an act. Now what are the various powers available with the governor with regard to giving assent on the state bills? The powers are that he can give assent to the bill and then bill will become an act, or he can withhold the assent and bill will become dead, or he can send it for the reconsideration by the House or the state legislature, or he can reserve it for the president's consideration. And some of the situation when it can be reserved are that if it is infringing the constitutional provisions, if it is not in sync with one or more than one central government laws. Now comes Article 201 of the Constitution, which talks about the various powers that are available with the President with regard to the decisions to be made on the state bills. That President can give assent to the bill and bill will become an act. Or again he can withhold the assent, that bill will become dead. Or he can send it for the reconsideration by the House if it is a non-money bill. Interestingly, Constitution doesn't prescribe any timeline within which the decisions by the governor or by the president should be made on the state bills. So Mr. R.N. Ravi, who is a former IPS officer, was appointed as the governor of the state of Tamil Nadu. And the state government said that the governor was sitting on the state bills, was not taking decision on the state bills, which was causing the policy paralysis. And the state government said that the governor was not taking decision on more than 10 bills for continuously more than 3 years. And that is the reason state government approached the Supreme Court. And the Supreme Court in State of Tamil Nadu versus Governor of Tamil Nadu 2023 judgment said that the president or the governor should decide on the state bills within due time. For example, the Supreme Court said that the president should decide on the state bill within 3 months timeline. That is the reason the president invoked this power under Article 143 of the presidential reference, which says that if the president feels that an important legal or factual issue has come up or might come up that may affect the public and needs expert advice, he can seek opinion of the Supreme Court. Court will then look into the matter and give its advice to the president after holding any hearing it thinks are necessary. So there are two situations when this advisory jurisdiction can be asked of the Supreme Court. One is that if there is a question of law or fact of public importance, or if there is an issue that is arising out of any pre-constitutional agreement or treaty. In the first case, when the president is consulting Supreme Court on any matter of law or fact, the Supreme Court is not bound to give his or her advice. Whereas in the second case, when the question is with regard to any pre-constitutional treaty or agreement, the Supreme Court is bound to give the advice. However, the president is not bound by the advice, and this power is actually used not used frequently. Now, what are the various questions that were asked by the president under this Article 143 or the presidential reference that was made? The major concerns of the president was that no timeline was given in the constitution, whether for the governor under article 200 or whether for the president under article 201. So can Supreme Court dictate the terms and can Supreme Court give a timeline? And this judicial imposition of timeline questions whether timelines can be imposed by such judicial orders and such timelines which are not mentioned at all in the constitution. And the deemed assent, that Supreme Court said that if within this timeline it will not be passed, it will be considered deemed assent. The President questions the Supreme Court use of Article 142, which provides the plenary power to the Supreme Court for deemed assent of bill, and the President called it alien to the constitutional scheme as it is not mentioned. Also, the scope of Article 142. The Supreme Court seeks clarity on the Supreme Court's plenary power when constitutional, statutory or the provisions exist. That are the powers under Article 200, 201 justiciable? These were some of the questions. So, Constitution actually gives various powers to the Supreme Court. For example, the Supreme Court has original jurisdiction under which they can decide the federal matters, like the matter between center or the state or different states. They have also the appellate jurisdiction where the appeal can be filed in the criminal matters, civil matters, etc. They also have the writ jurisdiction, that various writs can be issued under Article 32 of the Constitution, like habeas corpus, mandamus, etc. And then this advisory jurisdiction under Article 142 of the Constitution. So what are the various questions? For example, the questions with regard to the governor roles, question with regard to the president's role, that if the presidential discretion on bills reserved by the governor is judicially reviewable or not. Also, there were further questions posed to the Supreme Court, that judicial review, that is the justiciability of decisions on bill before they become law, that whether once a particular bill was passed by the state legislature or by the parliament in case of central law, and it got the assent of the governor or the president, and now it became a law, in that case Supreme Court can look into the constitutionality of that law. But whether the Supreme Court has the power to look into the constitutionality of a bill or not is again one of the questions which is asked by the President. Because since it is still in the drafting stage, it is still in the bill stage, so whether the Supreme Court can actually decide on the constitutionality of bill or not is again a question that was asked. Also, the Supreme Court's power under the Article 142, its scope including issuing direction potentially contrary to the existing law. Also, the constitutional and procedural matters, that is the requirement for 5-judge bench for the constitutional interpretation, that when the timeline was not fixed in the Constitution and the Supreme Court was interpreting the Constitution, and from their own self they gave that judgment that there should be a timeline that should be fixed for decision on the state bills. So in a way they are interpreting the Constitution. So the President's question is that shouldn't be a constitutional bench with minimum 5 judge under Article 143 of the Constitution should be first constituted to look into the interpretation of the Constitution or not. So it is not for the first time that the presidential reference was made under Article 143 of the Constitution. There has been more than 10 instances when the presidential reference were made. Some of the notable cases were, for example, the Delhi Laws Act 1951, where the scope of delegated legislation was asked by the President under Article 143. Then the Kerala Education Bill, which came in 1958. Under this, the balance or the harmony between the fundamental rights and the directive principles of state policy under part 4 of the Constitution, that is part 4 DPSP and part 3 fundamental rights, that is the balance between both of them was how that can be made, and what is the importance of this harmony was again talked about under this presidential reference of Kerala Education Bill. Then the Berubari case of 1960. So under this, the Supreme Court said that the territorial secession needs the constitutional amendment because it was not explicitly mentioned in the Constitution. So whenever some enclaves were actually given to the Bangladesh, in that case the Supreme Court said that to actually give or to cede some part of our territory to some other country, we need constitutional amendment. Then in Kesav Singh case of 1965, the Supreme Court gave various opinions with regard to the legislative privileges which are provided under the Constitution. For example, the privileges of the MPs are given under Article 105 of the Constitution. Then in presidential poll case of 1974, the elections will be conducted even with the assembly vacancies. That the Supreme Court said that if there are vacancies in the electoral college which will be electing the president, that if the vacancies should not lead to any deficiency or should not lead to any stoppage of the presidential election. Rather, even with the vacancies in the electoral college, the president's election should be conducted. Then in the third judge's case of 1998, the collegium system was evolved in a proper manner. After SP Gupta case, that was the first judge's case, and the second judge's case, there was there was this confusion that whether consultation means concurrence with regard to the appointment of the judges or not. In the third judge's case, actually, it was said that the consultation which was mentioned in the Constitution means the concurrence of the judiciary, and the collegium system was set up under formally, properly after this third judge's case. Now, what is the significance of this presidential reference? First, it brings the constitutional clarification. Despite being one of the lengthiest constitution of the world with more than 395 articles, still there are very vague provisions. For example, under Article 143, the president can go for seeking the reference or the advice of the Supreme Court. But it is saying that in matter of any law or fact. But what constitutes the matter of law or fact? That is not mentioned at all. So similarly, there are various confusions, there are various places where we need clarification, the executive or the president need clarification. So the presidential reference helps in interpreting the roles of the president and the governors in this case, or it also helps in interpreting various provisions of the Constitution, which were already we saw in various cases where this interpretation was actually happened. Also, it brings clarity over the judicial oversight on the non-time bound executive actions. That in this case, that when the Supreme Court actually dictated the terms, the Supreme Court actually said that within this timeline, actually the decision should be made by the president or by the governor. It will actually ensure that time bound executive actions, it will not lead to delay in taking the decisions. It is not only limited to the executive actions. One of the major criticism of the collegium system is that there is no proper cooperation or the collaboration between the executive and the judiciary in case of appointment of judges also. That whenever the names are cleared by the collegium, again the executive doesn't take action on time. Generally, there were some names which were pending before the executive which were cleared by the collegium way back. Again, why? Because there is no law, there is no provision in the Constitution which explicitly says that within this time the executive should take decision on the appointment of the judges. So to some extent, when there is a delay with regard to the decisions of the executive, that leads to the policy paralysis or that impacts the governance of the country. Also, it brings the democratic balance, that it reaffirms the separation of the power. That when the president actually made the reference and she is questioning the various plenary powers or the judgment which was given by the Supreme Court, or she is seeking the clarification, it also brings us to the point or the reaffirming the separation of the power. That powers are separated with regard to the legislature, executive and the judiciary. They have separate domains. The domain of the judiciary is to interpret the law, interpret the constitutional provisions, and they cannot dictate the terms or they cannot actually dictate the executive. Time and again, there has been various cases of judicial activism or judicial overreach. For example, highway liquor ban, Vishakha guideline, Prakash Singh judgment, etc., where this separation of power, in India there is no watertight compartmentalization, and obviously it also brings us to the point that whether to what extent what will constitute the judicial overreach and what will only constitute the judicial interpretation. So time and again this comes into the discussions, and with this presidential reference which was made by the president, it again reaffirms that we need to have the separation of power between executive and judiciary. Also, it prevents the institutional overreach. That harmony between all the three institutions, that is legislature, executive and the judiciary, needs to be maintained to ensure that we are leading to a proper governance. and any of the institution should not or must not overreach or breach their mandate which is given by the constitution. Then the procedural certainty, that it will resolve the intergovernmental procedural doubts. It is not limited to any one state, that these federal tensions with regard to the role of governor as agent of center, role of governor with regard to the announcement of or recommending the president rule, or role of governor with regard to the decisions on the bills, all these are not limited to any one state. Rather, these issues keeps going on. They are in discussions, they are in news, and there are multiple issues that are going on with other states also. So once we'll get the procedural certainty, we will get the clarity that will also help in resolving various other issues, and that will help in establishing a cooperative federalism. Also, it will help in providing the guidelines for the future disputes, that once the clarification comes from the Supreme Court, the future decisions will be taken on time. And then the federal coordination, that it will define the central state jurisdiction boundaries, that whether what should be the clear-cut situations when the reference should be made, and whether the president should send it for the reconsideration, in what timeline they should take the decision, all that clarity will come, and there the fencing of the jurisdiction of the center and state will also come. Also, it will help in promoting cooperative federalism, that is, both the center and state will be able to cooperate better, and they will be able to contribute in the growth story of India. But there are some challenges with regard to the presidential reference. For example, the non-binding nature. Even after getting the opinion of the Supreme Court, that is not binding on the executive, that is not binding on the president. So, the Supreme Court opinion under Article 143 of the Constitution is not binding. It is just as advisory. So again, it doesn't create any impact on ground, and it limits the practical impact on the ground, or it leads to very less impact on the governance or the decision making of the government. Also, the risk of politicization, that it may lead to potential misuse for the political validation, that if the ruling party wants to seek validation on any matter of law or fact, or any matter of any act of the parliament or act of the bill of the government, in that case they can seek the opinion, and then they can seek the validation from the Supreme Court itself under this presidential reference, as said by the critics. And it can also compromise the judicial neutrality if the office of judiciary is getting politicized. If they are giving the political validation, that means that it is leading to compromising of the judicial neutrality. Also, there is unclear referral standards, that no clear definition of public importance, that any matter of law or fact of public importance, what constitutes public importance, what exactly is the public importance, that is not defined at all. And it means that it is the complete executive discretion, that in what case they can refer to the Supreme Court, or under what circumstances the advisory jurisdiction can be sought from the Supreme Court. For example, under this case itself, when this judgment came, the central government or the president had various other options, that they could have gone for the review petition or the curative petition. But again, it is the complete discretion of the president itself, and that is the reason they sought this executive, they have gone for this advisory jurisdiction. Then there are institutional tensions that may further gets the fire. For example, it can heighten the judiciary executive conflicts. Like, there were earlier various tensions that were going on after the NJAC Act was passed by the government, and then the Supreme Court struck down that NJAC Act. Then with regard to the decisions on the collegium system, that the Supreme Court said that the executive is not taking decisions, etc. So there are already lot of tensions, lot of friction points between the judiciary and the executive, and this can further lead to more conflicts, and it can further undermine the judicial independence that they may have to work on in pressure or under pressure. Also, there is no response time, no constitutional deadline for the Supreme Court opinion, and that may cause the delay in the governance decisions, that there is no timeline that is fixed by the constitution itself, that under what time the Supreme Court should actually give their opinion on any of the presidential reference that is made. So in conclusion, what we can say, that there is need for what may be the possible reason why the constitutional makers did not mention any fixed timeline. That one of the reason, or one of the important reason for that, could be that the constitutional makers were of view that these people who will be holding these offices, whether the office of president, whether the office of governor, or the office of judge of Supreme Court, they are very responsible positions, and the people who will be holding these offices will be working for the welfare of the people, will be working for the proper governance of the country, and these offices will not be politicized. These offices, the decisions from these offices will not be taken based on some political factors, and that can be one of the reason why there was no fixed timeline that was given in the constitution to take decision. So there is need for proper cooperation. There is need for proper clarity on these constitutional provisions that can actually help in addressing the federal tensions, and that can also help in reducing the institutional tensions going on between the judiciary and the executive. And this is a prelims question that was asked in the prelims examination with regard to the advisory jurisdiction. You people tell me the answer of this question in the comment box. Also, this is a mains practice question that you people can write from this topic. Moving towards next topic, that is textile sector in India. The context of this topic is that the textile industry is pitching for a 5% uniform GST rate for entire textile and apparel value chain. So the textile industry is pitching for a fiber neutral GST at 5% for entire textile and apparel value chain. As of now, there are different textiles like cotton, jute, etc., which attracts different rate of GST, and which impacts the proper supply of these products and also limits the overall growth of the sector. And that is the reason this industry is seeking the uniform rate. For example, the cotton based textile has a 5% GST except for the garment that are priced above 1000, and these garments attract 12% duty, etc. Then the polyester output, critical inputs for the polyester output is taxed at 18%. So that leads to confusion. That also limits the ease of doing business, and that is the reason industry is seeking a uniform rate of 5%. And this particular topic pertains to syllabus of your GS paper 3, employment, growth, development and inclusive growth. Let's try to understand the overall status of the sector first. So the market size of the textile sector in 2023 was $160 billion, and it is projected to reach to almost $250 billion by 2030. And as of financial year 24, the textile sector contributes 2.3% to the GDP of India, and it employs over 45 million people. It is one of the most labor intensive industries which is providing employment. And interestingly, the labor force participation rate of women is much higher in the textile industry as compared to some other sectors. Also, it contributes 10.5% to India's export earning, overall export earnings. Also, if you look into the share of India's textile exports for the financial year 24, the majority of that is ready-made garments of all textiles, which constitute 42.4%. And then if you talk about the fabric production in financial year 24 until April to June 23-24 in million square meter, it is the cotton yarn which constitute majority of the chunk. Then comes some of the recent trends with regard to the trade related data of the textile sector. In financial year 24, the textile trade in US billion dollar was $35.9 billion of exports and $8.80 billion of imports. And in financial year 23, it was only $36.7 billion export and $10.48 billion of import. You can see that there is a stagnancy that you can witness with regard to the textile sector. The exports are not reaching beyond a certain limit. Average export is to some extent largely around $30-35 billion itself. Now, India's textile is driven by a strong policy framework that saw 11% year-on-year growth in ready-made garment export in August 24, and it expected to reach $350 billion by 2030. Also, we have a competitive advantage that we have abundant availability of the raw materials like cotton, jute, etc. And we also have the skilled manpower, and in the cost of production relative to the other major textile producers, our position is much competitive. We have a huge demography, we have a huge labor power, which can actually help us in fulfilling the vision of the developed country by 2047, and that can also help in realizing the full potential of the textile sector. Apart from that, the skill, generally to manage the various various power looms, etc., or the factories related to the textiles, we have the skill for that. The skills related to the stitching, etc., we have the skilled manpower for that. Also, 100% FDI, the under automatic route, is allowed in Indian textile sector, and government also approved a scheme worth $4445 crore to establish 7 integrated mega textile parks with plug and play model. So government is also providing the policy support. And also there has been various other schemes like Samarth scheme for the for ensuring that skills are being provided to the people in the textile sector. Also, the investment are increasing. In June 23 itself, government approved research and development projects worth 61.09 crore in textile sector, and the total FDI inflows stood at $4.56 billion between April 2000 to September 2024. So it is one of the important sectors where we are witnessing the high FDI that is coming. Apart from that, the government launched this production linked incentive scheme for the textile sectors, and this production linked incentive scheme, which provides incentive based on the incremental sales, and it actually covered the 14 key sectors with an outlay of 1.95 lakh crore, and it created more than 1.3 lakh jobs by August 2024 for overall sector, if we are saying. And the mobile manufacturing, etc., were some of the sectors which were high beneficiaries, and it was also being provided to the textile sector. But there are some key challenges in India's textile industry. For example, there is lack of trade agreements. There are various other countries like Bangladesh which have a flourishing the textile industries, which have the competitive advantages because of their status of the low developed country or the least developed economy. So more than that, they also have the labor power, they have the various areas of good production of the cotton, jute, etc. So their cost of production is much lesser as compared to our cost of production, and that is the reason they are exporting more as compared to us, if we talk about the overall ready-made garments. So we are not able to sign major free trade agreements with various other countries, and that is the reason our products are getting more tariff as well as non-tariff barriers whenever they are being exported to other countries. So due to this lack of free trade agreements, due to lack of proper trade agreement with the help of which our products can attract less tariff and non-tariff barriers, we are not able to achieve the full potential. We are not able to leverage the full potential, and especially no FTAs with major textile consuming regions like United States. Also, the competitors like Vietnam and China benefit from the preferential market access that they have signed with these countries, and that makes their exports cheaper and more competitive. Apart from that, the stagnant growth and the export decline. The textile sector grew from financial year 20 to 24, which is only 1.8%, or it is negative of 1.8% if you talk about the compounded annual growth rate. Also, the apparel sector contraction, it contracted to 8.2%, minus 8.2% growth we have witnessed if we talk about the compounded annual growth rate. Also, the apparel export fell from $15.5 billion from financial year 20 to $14.5 billion in financial year 24, and this is again the data of the imports and the export. You can see it is more or less stagnant. Also, the high raw material cost, that is the quality control orders that restrict the synthetic fiber imports, because these synthetic fibers are cheap and we have the labor power, we have the machineries with which by processing these fibers we can produce good quality of the garments. But there are various restrictions with regard to the sanitary and the phytosanitary measures, quality controls, and that limits the import of these raw materials, which limits the overall production of the garments and also doesn't help in making our export much more competitive. Also, the polyester fibers, they are 33 to 36% costlier than China. The viscose fiber, which is 14 to 16% more expensive. Because of this high cost of raw material, obviously the overall cost of the garment will be much higher, and which will make our export less competitive in the foreign markets. Also, the low export competitiveness, that is, the supply chain is fragmented. It is spread across states, that we will generally witness that the states which are good producer of the raw materials, they do not have good industrial linkages of the textile sector. And that is the reason, when there is lack of proper robust supply of the raw materials to the industries, obviously it will lead to high logistics cost, and that cost will be further passed on to the actual customers, me and you, who are buying the shirts from the malls or from the e-commerce websites. Also, the China and Vietnam, they operate vertically integrated models, that they have a robust supply chain, raw material, grading, sorting, supply to the industry, and then ensuring that raw material was used for finished garment, proper packaging, branding, marketing, transportation, all that is properly linked. So that leads to reduction in the cost, and that ensures that the products are remain competitive. Also, the Bangladesh, that enjoys duty-free market access as the least developed country, low developed country, which undercuts the Indian exports. That is the thing that I was talking about. Also, the sustainability and the environmental compliance, that global brands demand higher renewable energy use, recycling and raw material traceability, that from where we are bringing the raw materials. Also, the EU regulations with regard to the 2021 to 24 with regard to various non-tariff barriers. So that affects the 20% of India's overall textile exports. More than that, if you look into some of the foreign brands like Prada, Gucci, which are very popular in other parts of the world, do we have some kind of those brands who got such popularity in other parts of the world? Answer is no. I don't know the quality of these Prada, Gucci products, because I could not buy any of such product as of now. But I know that the products of Ellen Solly, Levi's, Raymond or Manyavar, etc., they are of decent quality. But still, we are not able to export them to their full potential, because of lack of proper support, because of high cost of these products, because of lack of proper branding and marketing. So again, that limits or hinders the overall development of the textile sector. Now, there were various government initiatives that are taken to boost the textile sector. For example, the PLI that I was talking about, which was launched in the year 2021, that provides incentive worth 10,683 crore. Investment will be done in across 5 years. Additional production turnover will be given. Additional employment of over 7.5 lakhs will be created. And also the participation of women will be in the large number. And high priority will be given in the aspirational districts and tier 3 to 4 towns. This aspirational district program were launched to actually improve the overall economic and social indicators in the districts which are very poor, which do not have the good economic and social indicators, which were very poor. And this was a flagship program from the Niti Aayog. And similarly, on the similar lines, the government launched this Pradhan Mantri Dhan Dhanya Krishi Yojana, which will be again focusing on those districts which have the low cropping intensity, which have the low institutional credit availability of the farmers. Also, this PM Mitra, or the Mega Integrated Textile Regions and Apparel Parks, were approved, which provides for world-class plug-and-play infrastructure, that companies will have to just come in these parks and they will have to start the production. They don't have to acquire the land or procure the land. Hub for training, research and innovation. Also, they will be boosting to export by strengthening competitiveness of sector. It will also help in achieving the economy of scale, attract FDI and global manufacturers. And these are the 7 PM mega textile parks that were approved. One is in Lucknow, Uttar Pradesh, one is in Madhya Pradesh, Dhar, Gujarat, Navsari, and then in Karnataka, Kalburgi, Viruddhanagar in Tamil Nadu, and Warangal in Telangana, and Amravati in the Maharashtra. These are the 7 integrated textile regions. And next is the way forward, that what should be done for improving the textile sector. First of all, we need to actually look into the labor and the infrastructure issues. For example, we need to expand the PM Mitra to some other areas like West Bengal, which are the one of the highest producers of the jutes, and the areas of the Bihar and the Uttar Pradesh, where we have the surplus labor power. Also, the worker housing model that is there in the China, that in the textile parks itself, in the industrial regions itself, there are various dormitories that are set up, that people will be working, they will be taking rest, they will be sleeping, they will be taking rest on that parks itself, on that factory itself, that helps in improving the efficiency, that helps in improving the overall productivity. Although there are proper support measures that are provided to them, there are proper measures that are taken for these people who are placed in these working housing models. Then the supply chain integration. Again, there is need for vertically integrated textile park connecting the raw material to the ultimate market, and fiber to fashion hubs. That these companies which are actually making these garments, they need to be aware about the recent trends, recent changes. For example, the trend of the Indo-Western, or for example, the demand of the cotton fabric or linen, etc. They need to understand demand, and for that there is need for research, there is need for survey. When the companies will understand the market properly, they will be able to produce such garments which will be high in demand, and the profitability of the company as well as overall sector will increase. Also, there is need for trade and man-made fibers push, that instead of only being dependent on the natural sources, we need to push for the man-made fibers, which can actually ensure that proper availability of the raw materials, and which can also bring the cost of production. Also, we can sign free trade agreements with European Union, US, and some other markets which are the highest consumers of the textiles. Also, the man-made fiber manufacturing incentives or the production incentives can be given, and government in this regard itself has launched the National Technical Textile Mission. Also, the green manufacturing for MSMEs, that will help in attracting less taxes, and that will also make it more competitive at the global level. And we should also produce textile recycling. For example, the proper extraction or the textile recycling, etc., proper centers can be created. Then the circular economy focus should be there, that it's not only that we are producing, but we are also processing, we are taking back the waste that are being generated from the textile. That will actually help in achieving the 5F vision of our Honorable Prime Minister, which is farm to fiber, fiber to factory, factory to fashion, and fashion to foreign. Means from farm we are able to achieve the foreign, that is from producing the raw materials to ultimately achieving the exports. And this is a mains practice question that you people can write from this topic. In our simplified section, first topic is, what is the universe antimatter mystery? This is related to your GS paper 1, important geophysical phenomena. This can be also related to the space technology of your GS paper 3, and this has appeared in today's The Hindu, page number 12. So what exactly is the matter and the antimatter? Matter is all around us, what we can see, touch, like atom, star, planets, human. And at the smallest level, matter is made of particles like electron, proton, and neutron. And similarly, we have the antimatter, which is the mirror image of the matter. For every smaller particle, there is an antiparticle or antimatter with the same mass and the opposite charge. So why this is important, the study that we are conducting as of now? Because as per the Big Bang theory that says that 13.8 billion years ago, the universe started with equal amount of matter and antimatter. When this Big Bang started, at that point of time, universe has equal amount of both matter and the antimatter. But slowly and gradually, we see that visible universe is made of matter only, that whatever we can see with our eyes, the star, planet, humans, while the antimatter is almost missing. Why is it so? Why matter survived and antimatter vanished? The scientists could not fully understand why the matter survived and antimatter vanished. There were studies that were going on. For example, one of the studies was this large hadron collider in Europe. And one possible reason can be that nature may treat these matter and antimatter differently. And that is the phenomena that is called as the CP violation. What is that CP violation? That is the charge conjugation, where this charge, with the help of this charge conjugation, it replaces a particle with its antiparticle, and it also leads to parity transformation. So C understands for the charge conjugation, P understands for the P leads to that parity transformation, that we are flipping the system like a mirror image. So CP violation means if after doing both, the laws of physics are not the same. So CP mystery is broken. So this CP violation, where C stands for the charge conjugation that replaces a particle with its antiparticle, and P for parity transformation that flips the system like a mirror image. And if after doing both, the laws of the physics are not the same, that means CP symmetry is violated or broken. And this is the reason this CP violation could explain that why matter became dominant in the visible universe rather than the antimatter. And it is for the first time the scientists observe CP violation in the barons, which are the heavy particles like the protons and the neutrons. And previously the CP violation was seen only in the mesons, which are again a type of sub particles. They are the lighter particle made of quark and the anti-quark bars. And which particle was actually studied to actually look after this CP violation? It was the lambda B0 boron. This is the lambda B0 boron, which is made of 3 quarks. One is up, second is down, and the third is the bottom. So these are the 3 quarks with the help of which this lambda B0 boron was made. Also the scientist studies this lambda B0 boron and its antiparticle that decayed into smaller particle like proton, kaons and pions. And this experiment was conducted at Large Hadron Collider in Europe, and there was this LHCb detector which was part of this Large Hadron Collider itself that collected the data with regard to the violation that was being witnessed. And how this experiment was conducted? It was conducted with the help of the billions of protons were collided at the high speeds, and these collisions occasionally produced this lambda B0 barons and their antibarons, means particle and the antiparticles. And researchers used the advanced algorithm to spot the rare decays into the specific particles. And they then compared the decay rates of these lambda B0 barons and their antiparticles to look for the CP violations, that after this experiment are they violating that this charge conjugation and parity or not, that whether both that mirror image is being created or not. And the team found that 2.5% difference in decay rates between the matter and the antimatter version, and this difference is statistically significant enough to collect with that to be called a discovery in the physics. And this is the first observation with regard to the CP violation in barons, not just the mesons, and it helps in explaining why the universe has more matter than the antimatter. But the discovery opens the door for the more experiments. As of now we do not have the complete clarity. And what is the next? The scientists will look into other barons for the CP violation, and they will also look for the new particles or forces that might explain the mystery why more matter than antimatter. And in simple word you can say that we will find a new clue in the mystery of why the universe exists, why is it in different forms, and why is it in a particular state, in a particular form. And matter and antimatter were supposed to cancel each other out after Big Bang, but something tilted the balance in favor of matter itself, and that is the reason we are witnessing more matter and not antimatter, because since they are mirror image, so then the matter will be cancelling out antimatter. But no, the antimatter vanished, they declined, and matter only remained. So why is it so? That is what the experiment will try to understand. And this Big Bang, which was started more than 13.8 billion years ago, after the first second Big Bang, the birth of subatomic particles happened, and then at around 3,80,000 years later, electrons and the nuclei combined to form the atoms, and around 300 million years later the beginning and the formation of the stars and galaxies started, and around 9 billion later formation of the solar system and Earth happened. This is about the Big Bang. This is the order of expanding and the cooling of the universe, that now it became habitable, that we are able to take breath, we are able to live in today's universe. Next topic is on October 1, India EFTA trade pact to take off. This is related to your GS paper 2, International Treaties and Agreement, GS paper 3, Growth and Development. And this has appeared in today's The Hindu, page number 10. So the free trade agreement between India and 4-nation European bloc will be implemented from October 1, Commerce Minister said. Two sides signed the trade and economic partnership agreement. Under the pact, India received an investment commitment of $100 billion in 15 years from the grouping, while allowing several products such as Swiss watch, chocolates and cut and polished diamonds at lower or zero duties in India. And European Free Trade Association members are Iceland, Liechtenstein, Norway and Switzerland. So what exactly is the free trade agreement? We can understand with the help of this flow chart that in the preferential trade area, we lower but not eliminate the barriers among the members. We just create a positive list that this agreement will only be applicable to these products which we have kept under this positive list. Then we have, this is the first stage of integration between one or the more than one countries. Then we have the free trade agreement, where we eliminate the internal barriers but we maintain independent external barriers. For example, if India and UK are signing FTA, they will eliminate the internal barriers, that they will ensure that they are reducing or they are bringing down tariffs to almost zero, and they will also limit the non-tariff barriers. But what will be the tariff India will be imposing on US, or what UK will be imposing on the US, that will be completely independent of free trade agreement. Then we have the customs union, where we will be eliminating the internal barriers, and then we agree on the common external barriers like EU, Turkey, or Russia, Kazakhstan, Belarus. Then we have the common market, where we are eliminating internal barrier, adopting common external barrier, and we are also allowing the free movement of resources like labor, capital, etc. And then we have the economic union, where we are eliminating internal barrier, we are adopting common external barriers, free movement of resources, and a uniform set of economic policies like European Union. Then the full integration that is witnessed in the case of United States, that there is a proper there is complete elimination of internal barrier, there is common external barrier, there is free movement of resources, as well as uniform set of economic policies across different states of United States. You can understand it with the help of another example. Let's suppose there is a person who went to any of the wedding, and he asked to one person of other gender that where is the counter of the coffee. That person said to this person that is on that side. Then they started talking on some of the topics, mutual topics. Then they started sharing the social media handles. Then they started talking on the phones. Then they thought that they are compatible with each other, and then they married. So the relation which started by asking the counter of the coffee ultimately led to the marriage of the person. That shows the increase in the integration of the relations that happened. Similarly, in the preferential trade area, that is the first stage of integration. Then the free trade agreement, where we keep a negative list, where the free trade agreement will not be applicable on the products that are kept under the negative list. And ultimately, the full integration is reached generally between the states of any one country, that is witnessed in the case of United States, that is full integration is witnessed in US. Next topic is that what does the sugar and salt labeling say? This is related to your GS paper 2 health, and this has appeared in today's The Hindu page number 12. So recently the health ministry has asked all the government departments to prominently display the amount of oil and sugar content on popular Indian snacks like samosa, vada pav, kachori, pizza and burger, stating that this information has to be shared in cafeterias, lobbies, meeting rooms, and even the government stationaries that are used. Why? What is the logic behind it? Actually, with the help of which the government or the health ministry wants to address the rise in the non-communicable diseases, rise in the obesity, etc. in the people. So with this, they want to promote a healthier dietary habits in various settings. These boards serve as a visual behavior changes, that this will help in nudging the behavior. For example, when government launched the Swachh Bharat Abhiyan, Swachh Bharat Mission, with the help of that also, when the Prime Minister of India was focusing on cleaning the places, with that people will be motivated, people will also be nudging their behaviors, and they will be also interested towards cleanliness. So with this, shift may be seen in the form of the better, healthier choices. And the key information about the hidden fats and the sugars in everyday foods or the highly processed foods will also be displayed, and people will be able to understand that. I will ask one important question to you people. You will be eating at least one or other processed food every day. Just recall that this kind of label that is generally there on the back side of that product. How many times you have actually read this? There are very few people who actually read this, that content of sugars, content of salt, the oil, the fat, whether it is saturated, unsaturated, or the trans fat. Please read this properly whenever you are consuming any product. Apart from this, look into the batch number, expiry, manufacturing of the product. Because you are eating something for your own body. Whatever you are eating, that will either benefit or that will either affect your body itself. So whatever we are eating, we should have a good amount of idea about that itself. Also, the warning label are being devised because of this rise in the non-communicable diseases, which accounts over 66% of overall death across the country, and in the form of cardiovascular diseases, diabetes, chronic respiratory diseases, cancers. This is somewhat becoming a public health challenges. Also, a private venture is saying that too much sodium, added sugar, refined oil, sugar, sweetened drinks, often disguised as healthy options, can even derail the best diets. For example, the zero Coke or the no sugar Coke. Again, that is not healthy option. So these highly processed food contribute directly to the risk of heart diseases, stroke, type 2 diabetes, and the poor metabolic health. Also, the WHO recommends a healthy diet throughout the life to help prevent all forms of malnutrition, as well as range of diet related non-communicable diseases that and lower the risk of infectious diseases for adults in India. The recommended daily intake is less than 65 gram of total fat, less than 25 gram of added sugar, and less than 5 gram of salt. We are breaching to a larger extent all of these in our everyday life. And limits have also been set up for children in their various phases of development. Also, this 75-25 initiative was launched by Ministry of Health and Family Welfare that aims to provide the standardized care to 75 million people with hypertension and diabetes by December 2025. 42.01 million people treated for hypertension, 25.27 million for diabetes. That will help in achieving 89.7% of target till 2025. And the non-communicable disease screening campaign launched with a goal of achieving 100% screening of individual aged 30 years and above during the period of Feb 20 to March 31, 2025. Next topic is that the National Institutional Ranking Framework, or NIRF, to award the institutions negative scores for retraction from journals. This is related to GS paper 3, IT and computers, and this has appeared in today's The Hindu page number 7. So this National Institute of Ranking Framework, or NIRF, was approved by MHRD on 29 September 2015, which gives the ranking of the institutions, whether it is related to the management, engineering, medical, across the various domains. This NIRF gives ranking of the institutions. And why it was launched? Because earlier there were various rankings like QS ranking, etc., which were giving ranking to Indian institutions. So India thought to have one of its ranking of its own kind. There are various parameters that are kept in mind. For example, teaching and learning resources, research and professional practice, graduation outcome, outreach and inclusivity, and the perception. That is the significant importance of the perception of the institution in the public domain. And this methodology actually rank institution across the countries, and it draws from overall recommendation, broad understanding arrived by the core committee set up by the MHRD, which was recommending to set up this framework. And these are the broad parameters that are kept into account while giving the ranking to the institutions. Now, what the NIRF said that in the first, it will award negative score to the higher education institution for papers that have been retracted, taken back from the journals in the last 3 calendar years and their corresponding citations. The NIRF said that we will be awarding negative weightage for retraction paper and their citation. And they are saying that these are the unethical practices. While most of the retraction are due to the unethical research practices such as data fabrication, manipulation of images, using the same images in multiple papers, dealing with the completely different materials, using the large language models, use of AI, etc., without proper disclosure, and so on. But there are some due to genuine mistakes. So if someone is doing this, there will be imposition of negative score. Also, the focus should be not mere on the quantity, but also towards the quality of the research that is happening, because that will actually help in improving the overall economic growth also, because as of now India is spending only 0.6 to 0.7% on the research itself, and the contribution of public sector is much higher as compared to the private sector. But if these private universities, if this private institution will improve their research infrastructure, their research overall architecture, that will actually help in overall economic growth, because these commodities, these products which are getting researched, we will be able to make them into the commercially viable products. Also, the research and professional practice is one of the important parameter that we have seen here for the NIRF ranking, and under this head scores are awarded for parameters such as weighted number of publications in a given year, quality of publications which are measured based on the total citation counts over the previous 3 years, and the number of citations in top 25 percentiles that are averaged over the previous 3 years. Moving towards the next topic, that is Hatti tradition of polyandry. This is related to your GS paper 1 salient features of Indian society, and it has appeared in today's Indian Express page number 9. So this Hatti is a closed knit community in Himachal Pradesh Uttarakhand border, and they were declared as scheduled tribe 3 years ago, and in this tribe polyandry was in vogue for centuries, but due to rising literacy among the women and the economic uplift of communities, the case of polyandry were not reported. So what exactly is the polyandry? Where one woman has multiple husbands, which is actually practiced in Hatti tribes. That is, generally a single woman will marry multiple husbands or multiple people. Then we have the monogamy, that is one spouse at a time. It is practiced by majority of Hindus, Christian and Parsis. Again, it can be categorized into serial monogamy and straight monogamy or non-serial monogamy. Serial monogamy means that under this husbands are or the spouse are permitted to marry anyone else after the death of the spouse, whereas in the straight monogamy it is one spouse for the lifetime. Even after the death of the spouse, the persons are not permitted to marry someone else. Then we have the polygyny, where one man have the multiple wives, or one man marries more than one woman. It is generally practiced in Toda tribe historically. Then endogamy, where marriage happens within the caste, clan or group itself. For example, the caste based marriages, that one caste will marry a person of same caste itself, that is the endogamy, that is within this group itself. That exogamy, that is marriage outside the clan or the gotra, that marriage will happen outside this particular group. So this is, let's suppose, gotra, so marriage will happen outside this gotra itself. Whereas in the case of endogamy, let's suppose this is the caste, then so marriage will happen within this caste itself, that is the case of endogamy. Then we have the levirate, where the widow marries the brother-in-law. That is practiced in part of some of the states in North India like Rajasthan, Haryana historically, but time and again it has also declined. Then sororate, where man marries the deceased wife's sister. That is seen in some tribal belts of the Jharkhand and Chhattisgarh historically. All these levirate and sororate were witnessed historically, but with the time this has declined significantly. This is all from today's analyst. Thank you very much. All the very best. Keep studying.